You find stuff in the ocean and they take it and people become billionaires, right? They find Russian or Roman ships filled with gold coins. And
the ocean's got a lot of secrets, but some of them can be pretty crazy.
One chamber was just for ornaments and jewelry, another chamber was for jewels, and there were sacks and sacks of diamonds and rubies.
Some divers found a treasure in a sunken ship, and no one knew what it was until they took a closer look. What they found was straight up shocking. It was the 19th century shipwreck. In July 2024, a group of Polish divers from the Baltic tech team went exploring off the coast of Sweden and stumbled upon something incredible. At about 58 meters down, near the island of Åland, they found a 19th century sailing ship just hanging out on the sea floor, untouched for over a century. A shipwreck isn't exactly breaking news, but this one had a surprise waiting inside. At first, the divers didn't think much of it. Sonar had picked up something below, and they figured it might just be an old fishing boat. But as they got closer, it became clear that this was something way bigger. The ship, about 16 meters long, had been carrying some seriously fancy cargo when it went down. They found over 100 bottles of champagne, other types of wine, porcelain items, and even bottles of mineral water from a brand that was once so valuable it had to be escorted by police. Let that sink in. Police escorts for bottled water. One of the divers, Tomasz Stachura, who's been doing this for 40 years, couldn't believe what they'd found. A shipwreck filled with unopened champagne bottles. That just doesn't happen. And these weren't just any bottles. Some of them were believed to be the kind of exclusive champagne made specially for the Russian Tsar. Back in the day, the royals had their own custom blends, and this stuff was made extra sweet just for them. There's even a chance the cargo was meant for a royal feast in Stockholm or a lavish party in St. Petersburg before the ship met its end. The mineral water was another weirdly valuable find. It came from a German brand called Selters, which back in the 1800s was a huge deal. Either way, it was part of a high-end shipment that never made it to its destination. But this isn't the first time the ocean has casually decided to drop a history lesson on us. A few years back, with the Caesarea sunken treasure. Not just one, but two ancient shipwrecks were discovered in shallow waters, and they were absolutely packed with treasure. We're talking coins, statues, jewelry, even religious artifacts. Basically, a jackpot of lost history just sitting there, waiting to be found. The first shipwreck dated back to the Roman period, which means it had been chilling underwater for over 1,700 years. When divers first explored the wreck, they started pulling up silver and bronze coins, some still in shockingly good condition. But that wasn't all. They also found Roman statues and figurines, including a bronze eagle, which symbolized power in ancient Rome. Then there was a small statue of a Roman pantomimus, a type of performer, wearing a comic mask. That's right, even back then, people were into theater. And then there was the jewelry. One of the most incredible finds was a red gemstone ring, engraved with a lyre, a harp-like instrument that people associate with the biblical King David. Another ring, much larger and made of thick gold, had a green jewel carved with the image of the Good Shepherd, a symbol of early Christianity. That alone was enough to make historians lose their minds. But there was more. The divers also found small bronze bells, which the Romans believed could scare off evil spirits, along with massive bronze nails from the ship's hull, lead pipes used for pumping water, and even pottery. The Staffordshire hoard. That's exactly what happened in Staffordshire, England, back in 2009. A guy named Terry Herbert was scanning a field near the village of Hammerwich, probably hoping to find a few old coins or maybe some scrap metal. Instead, his detector went wild over something buried just beneath the surface. What he had just found would change everything we know about early medieval England. Buried in that field was a massive collection of gold and silver, over 4,600 pieces to be exact. Altogether, the hoard weighed about 5.1 kilograms of gold and 1.4 kilograms of silver, along with thousands of pieces of red garnet, a gemstone highly prized back in the day. This wasn't just some random pile of valuables. This was treasure from an elite warrior class, possibly even belonging to a king. Almost everything in the hoard was related to battle. There were golden fittings from swords, decorations from knives, and even pieces of a helmet. Whoever owned this stash wasn't just rich, they were powerful. Experts believe the treasure was buried sometime between 650 and 675 AD, a period when Anglo-Saxon England was a chaotic battlefield. The Kingdom of Mercia was rising to power, led by King Penda, a fearsome warrior who spent his life fighting for control of the land. This hoard may have belonged to him or one of his top warriors, hidden away during a time of war, never to be recovered. The discovery itself was pure luck. Terry was just out doing his thing with a metal detector. But once he realized how much gold he had uncovered, the experts rushed in. Archaeologists from Birmingham carefully excavated the area, digging up every last fragment they could find. When the discovery was officially announced in September 2009, the world went crazy for it. Over 10 million people visited the official website in just the first week. Everyone wanted to know more about this incredible glimpse into England's past. And the story didn't even stop there. In 2012, archaeologists went back and found even more treasure, 91 additional pieces, including a cross-shaped mount and a helmet cheek piece. The hoard just kept getting bigger. Eventually, it was declared a national treasure, and two museums, Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery and the Potteries Museum and Art Gallery, joined forces to buy it for over £3 million. Experts spent years carefully studying and preserving each piece, trying to figure out the story behind it all. Underneath the Padmanabhaswamy Temple, deep beneath a temple in India, behind massive iron doors, was a fortune so massive it didn't just break records, it redefined what hidden treasure even means. This isn't pirate gold or a lucky find by some metal detector guy in a field. This was billions of dollars worth of gold, gems and artifacts, all locked away in secret underground vaults for centuries, untouched and shrouded in mystery. The Padmanabhaswamy Temple in Kerala, India, is already a place of immense religious significance, but in 2011, it became famous for something else. Under orders from the Supreme Court of India, a team of experts pried open 5 out of 6 mysterious vaults hidden beneath the temple, revealing a level of wealth that sounds like something straight out of a fantasy novel. We're talking about piles of gold coins stretching back centuries, ancient artifacts covered in jewels, golden statues, and ornaments so elaborate and massive that it's almost impossible to believe they were real. Among the treasures was a 4-foot-tall solid gold idol of the Hindu god Vishnu, studded with diamonds and other precious stones, along with an actual golden throne meant for a deity. There were gold necklaces so long they could stretch across an entire room, gold ropes, ceremonial attire made of gold, and even solid gold coconut shells encrusted with rubies and emeralds. And that's just scratching the surface. The sheer volume of treasure, thousands upon thousands of gold coins intricate jewelry, and centuries-old relics was enough to make historians and archaeologists lose their minds. Some of the coins weren't even from India. They included Roman, Napoleonic, and medieval currency, proving that the temple had been a hub of wealth and trade for an unimaginably long time. As for how this much treasure ended up there, historians believe it was accumulated over centuries. The temple was under the protection of the royal family of Travancore, and because it was an important pilgrimage site and a major center of trade, kings, traders, and devotees continuously donated vast amounts of gold and valuables as offerings. This wealth wasn't just sitting in plain sight. It was locked away in underground vaults, hidden behind massive doors that hadn't been touched in generations. And here's where things get really interesting. Of the 6 vaults discovered beneath the temple, 5 were opened in 2011, revealing the staggering fortune. But one vault, Vault B, remains sealed. And it's not because no one wants to see what's inside. It's because people believe opening it could unleash something far worse than just another mountain of gold. Legends and myths surrounding Vault B claim that it's protected by a divine curse and that opening it could bring disaster to anyone involved. The royal family of Travancore, who have long had ties to the temple, refuse to allow it to be opened, believing that whatever is inside is meant to stay hidden. This, of course, has only fueled endless speculation. What could be in Vault B that's so terrifying that no one dares to open it? More treasure? Ancient texts with secrets lost to time? Something supernatural? No one knows, and unless the Supreme Court intervenes again, no one might ever find out. As for the treasure that was uncovered, its estimated worth is absolutely mind-blowing, at least $20 billion, and possibly even closer to $1 trillion if you factor in its historical and cultural significance. It's the kind of find that rewrites history books and sparks global fascination. But it's also caused a massive legal and ethical debate. Who really owns this treasure? Should it belong to the temple, the government, the people? And what about the reports that some of the gold has already mysteriously gone missing? For now, the treasure remains under heavy security, with temple authorities and the Indian government keeping a close watch. But when it comes to hidden treasures, few stories are as legendary as the Spanish galeon San Jose. If you ever dreamed of stumbling upon a treasure chest overflowing with gold and jewels, the story of the Spanish galeon San Jose is going to make you wish you had a time machine, a ship, and maybe some scuba gear. This isn't just any sunken ship. It's basically the holy grail of shipwrecks. It went down off the coast of Colombia in 1708, taking an unbelievable fortune with it. We're talking billions of dollars worth of gold, silver, and emeralds, all just sitting at the bottom of the ocean for over 300 years. Back in the early 1700s, Spain was flexing its power over the Americas, hauling ridiculous amounts of wealth from South America back to Europe. The San Jose was one of those treasure-packed ships, loaded with gold from Peruvian and Bolivian mines. But in 1708, during the War of the Spanish Succession, the British Navy decided they wanted a piece of the action. A brutal battle broke out near Cartagena, and before the Spanish could make a run for it, the San Jose exploded. Out of the roughly 600 people on board, only a handful survived. The ship and its cargo vanished beneath the waves, turning into one of history's most legendary lost treasures. Fast forward a few centuries, and the hunt for the San Jose became an obsession for treasure hunters, governments, and historians alike. In the 1980s, a US company called Sea Search Armada claimed they found it, but the Colombian government basically said, "Nope, not yours," sparking decades of legal battles. Then, in 2015, the Colombian Navy officially rediscovered the wreck using high-tech underwater robots, and just like that, the world's most famous lost ship was found again. The exact location is top secret, because obviously no one wants modern-day pirates swooping in to grab some loot. Bronze statues left behind by the Etruscans over 2,000 years ago. In the middle of Tuscany, beneath a thermal spring that had been bubbling for thousands of years, archaeologists pulled off one of the most significant discoveries in Italy's recent history. Over 20 beautifully preserved bronze statues, thousands of coins, and a whole stash of other artifacts that had been sitting there, forgotten for over 2 millennia. For centuries, the town of San Casciano dei Bagni was famous for its hot springs. Romans, Etruscans, and everyone in between swore by their healing powers. But what no one realized was that beneath all that mineral-rich water was an ancient sanctuary, packed with statues, offerings, and inscriptions that tell an entirely new story about the people who lived there. The site itself goes way back. The Etruscans built the original sanctuary around the 3rd century BCE, and then, as the Romans liked to do, they came in, took over, and made it even bigger. It became a massive spa complex, attracting people from all over the empire. Even big names like Emperor Augustus himself supposedly stopped by, because who wouldn't want a royal soak? But it wasn't just about relaxation. The statues found at the site depict gods like Apollo and Hygeia, hinting at the real reason this place was so important. People came here to be healed. Along with the statues, archaeologists found countless votive offerings, bronze body parts, heads, and inscriptions dedicated to deities, all left behind by those hoping for a divine cure. If you had a bad knee or some mysterious illness, you tossed in an offering and prayed for the best. And then there were the coins. Over 10,000 of them, spanning the Roman Republic to the Empire, some made of gold and others embedded in the thick mud at the bottom of the spring. Basically, the site was a massive, ancient wishing well, and people were tossing in their fortunes for centuries. That's what happened with the Saddle Ridge Hoard. In 2013, this couple in California were out walking their dog and literally stumbled upon what would become one of the biggest buried treasure finds in US history. It was just another normal day. The couple, known only as John and Mary, had lived on their property in the Sierra Nevada foothills for years. At first, they thought they had found a little pocket of loose change. Then they dug some more, and then some more. By the time they were done, they had pulled up a total of 8 cans, each packed with gold coins dating from 1847 to 1894. In total, there were 1,427 coins. That's when they realized this wasn't just a lucky find. This was a buried treasure. The Antikythera shipwreck. A group of Greek sponge divers set out in 1900, expecting nothing more than their usual haul, when they stumbled upon something that would rewrite what we know about ancient technology, trade, and art. The wreck sat about 45 meters underwater off the tiny island of Antikythera, and when diver Elias Stadiatis first went down, he came back up rambling about a pile of strange statues on the seafloor. At first, everyone thought he was suffering from nitrogen narcosis, basically deep-sea drunkenness from too much compressed air. But when the rest of the crew suited up and dove in, they saw it too. What they had found wasn't just another wreck, it was an ancient Roman-era cargo ship filled with treasures that had been sitting there for over 2,000 years. The first big excavation happened between 1900 and 1901. led by the Greek Navy, and it was no small task. These weren't modern scuba divers with high-tech gear. They were using old-school diving suits with huge, heavy helmets. Still, they managed to pull up a staggering collection of artifacts, marble and bronze statues, coins, jewelry, glassware, and even pieces of the ship itself. But the real game changer wouldn't be recognized for what it was until much later: the Antikythera mechanism. At first, the corroded lump of metal just looked like a random hunk of bronze. Then, researchers noticed something strange. Beneath all that rust and mineral buildup were tiny, interlocking gears. It took decades to fully understand what they were looking at, but eventually, experts realized this was an ancient Greek astronomical calculator, basically a 2,000-year-old mechanical computer. The mechanism could predict eclipses, track planetary movements, and even adjust for the irregular motion of the moon. The 1795 Massachusetts State House time capsule. If you want to step into a little slice of history, check out the 1795 Massachusetts State House time capsule. This gem is one of the oldest time capsules in the US and was buried under the cornerstone of the Massachusetts State House in Boston by some big names, including Governor Samuel Adams and Paul Revere. It all went down on July 4th, 1795, during a ceremony that marked the building's foundation. How's that for a historic kickoff? The whole thing was a big deal back then, symbolizing a fresh start as the state transitioned from an old state house to this new one right across from Boston Common. You can imagine the excitement buzzing around that event, with those founding figures coming together to make a statement. Fast forward to 1855, and guess what? Workers renovating the State House stumbled upon this hidden treasure. They opened it up, checked out the contents, and even tossed in a few extra items before reburying it. So, what's inside this capsule? A treasure trove of goodies. There's a collection of coins dating all the way back to 1652, which is like a mini history lesson in currency. You'll also find a silver plaque engraved by none other than Paul Revere himself, commemorating the capsule's burial. How cool is that? And let's not forget some newspapers from that era and a copper medal featuring a portrait of George Washington. It's like a VIP guest list of early American icons. In December 2014, conservators decided to dig it up again because of some construction work aimed at fixing water seepage issues in the aging building. During this second excavation, the contents were put on display at Boston's Museum of Fine Arts for everyone to admire. The Lycurgus Cup. The Lycurgus Cup is a stunning piece of Roman history from the 4th century, and it's not your average drinking vessel. This cup is famous for its mind-blowing dichroic properties, meaning it changes color depending on the light. When you shine a light on it from different angles, it shifts from a deep green to a rich red. This dazzling effect comes from the dispersion of gold and silver nanoparticles in the glass, which is pretty wild considering this technique predates modern nanotechnology by over 1,000 years. The cup is adorned with intricate carvings that tell the story of King Lycurgus of Thrace, a guy who went a little bonkers thanks to the god Dionysus. The detailed engravings really pop against the color-changing glass, making it a feast for the eyes. Imagine holding a cup that not only looks beautiful, but also tells a legendary tale. The imagery depicts Lycurgus's struggles against Dionysian excess, representing a broader theme of civilization versus chaos, making it a captivating piece of art that sparks curiosity. From a scientific perspective, the Lycurgus Cup showcases just how advanced ancient Roman glassmakers were. They knew what they were doing when they incorporated those gold and silver nanoparticles into the glass. This wasn't just a lucky accident. It showed that they had an early grasp of how materials work on a nanoscale, which is something we're still figuring out today. This understanding of light and materials allowed them to create not only functional objects, but also art. Next up, let's check out a place that's practically the poster child for ancient Greece.
You find stuff in the ocean and they take it and people become billionaires, right? They find Russian or Roman ships filled with gold coins. And
that showed just how far-reaching Rome's trade networks were.
One chamber was just for ornaments and jewelry, another chamber was for jewels, and there were sacks and sacks of diamonds and rubies.
With money flowing between different provinces on a massive scale. Do you think there are other treasures underwater that no one knows about? Or maybe they're even closer to you than you think?